Time for the Thursday night 10-minute Bible study here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I am live, and then after about 10 minutes, I am going to stop. We're doing Matthew chapter 21, the very end of the chapter, which is verses 33 to 46. That's a lot of verses. It's going to take me a while to read it, and so it's going to be hard to stay to the 10-minute limit, but I'm doing better. The last couple of ones have been a little bit shorter. I think there's going to be some exciting stuff coming up. Usually at the end of the 10 minutes, I take a little break, and then at 7 o'clock, I go on Zoom to answer any questions or talk with anyone who wants to come on. We can pray together and talk about the passage. Sometimes we just shoot the bull. But at any rate, anyone's welcome to join in that. The credentials are in the description. Last week, I had somebody send me a note on Facebook asking what the Zoom login and stuff was. I'm not looking at this in real time. I don't have a chance to do that. I can't do, multiple things at once like that. So better just to look in the description and grab that. It was someone I don't know, so who knows if they will show up. But at any rate, some exciting stuff. I think in the next month or so, probably shortly after Easter, the live discussion will go live, and we'll do that in person for anyone who wants to come to the church. And I'll still do the digital Bible studies, probably do it a little bit earlier, pre-recorded, so that I have a chance to focus a little bit on the live thing. And I think I'm going to be proposing to a few folks that we shake up the content a little bit and kind of see what happens, and do some testimonies and some other stuff. So all that is to come. Looking forward to Easter. Easter's coming up, right? Palm Sunday is April 10th. Easter Sunday is April 17th. You might want to be thinking now about someone you could invite to come with you to just join in the celebration of hope. I was talking to somebody today who was just talking about how depressed and difficult life has been as we've come out of COVID, and it doesn't seem like the last couple of years have been productive. So lots of people out there feeling that way. Church can help. Relationship with God can help. I know that it's a daily prayer is such a huge thing in my life to keep me focused and to keep me moving forward, even when nothing is moving forward. Maybe keep me moving forward is not even the right way to think about it. It just, because I'm not really trying to move forward. Like, I'm trying to grow, and I'm trying to just enjoy what it is in whatever situation God has put me in. And my daily time with God is huge on that, and church helps with that. Anyway, the parable of the tenants. Now, keep in mind, this is in Jesus' movement toward Jerusalem, where he knows he's going to die, be arrested, die, and rise again. He knows it's going to be painful. He's been talking with his followers about how all that's going to work. And the tensions between him and some of the religious leaders just keep getting worse. They've questioned his authority. He tells a parable of the two sons, the bad one, obviously, of which is one of the religious authorities, or the stereotype of the religious authorities. And then he tells this parable. He says, listen to another parable, guys. There was a landowner who planted a vineyard. Wonder who the landowner is going to be. There was a landowner who planted a vineyard. He put a wall around it, dug a wine press in it, and built a watchtower. It's like the details distract from the obvious gotcha moment that's coming. Then he rented the vineyard to some farmers and moved to another place. When the harvest time approached, he sent his servants to the tenants to collect his fruit. The tenants seized his servants. They beat one, killed another, and stoned a third. He sent other servants to them. Wonder who the servants are. He sent other servants to them. More than the first time, the tenants treated them the same way. Last of all, he sent his son to them. They'll respect my son, he said. But when the tenants saw the son, they said to each other, this is the heir. Let's kill him and take his inheritance. So they took him and they threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. Gee, wonder who that could be. Therefore, and keep in mind, this is before Jesus has been arrested and crucified. So he's been talking about it with his inner circle, but I don't think he's been talking about it with everybody. But it was written down, 40, 50, 60 years after his arrest, crucifixion, and resurrection. And so it makes you wonder if, and some scholars have speculated that Matthew has put this parable in the mouth of Jesus. That's not my understanding of it, but it's certainly, you can understand why people might have that opinion. He says, therefore, verse 40, therefore, when the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those tenants? Well, he will bring those wretches to a wretched end, they replied, having apparently no idea that this is about them. And he will rent the vineyard to other tenants who will give him his share of the crop at harvest time. And Jesus said to them, have you never read in the scriptures? The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. The Lord has done this, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore, I tell you that the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a people who will produce its fruit. Anyone who falls on this stone will be broken to pieces. Anyone on whom it falls will be crushed. When the chief priests and the Pharisees heard Jesus' parables, they knew he was talking about them. Ding, 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 ding. They looked for a way to arrest him, but they were afraid of the crowd because the people held that he was a prophet. So the people don't get it either, right? They see him as just a prophet. They don't understand that Jesus is the Son in the parable. The Pharisees and the chief priests, they figured out, when the story's over. But let's not be too judgmental about them. Let's think about what this might mean for us and what it means for us to work in God's vineyard. And one of the things that's interesting is it doesn't say that they produced no fruit. The problem is not that they didn't produce any fruit. The problem is that they didn't share it with the owner. The problem is that they didn't deliver it to the owner. The problem was that they disrespected the prophets and the son who ultimately came and said, hey, you guys are being selfish here. And I think about that, living in a community that's really very wealthy here just outside of San Francisco. And it occurs to me that there's a lot of fruit in this community. Like, people have taken what God has given them, and we have built beautiful buildings, and we have got beautiful streets, and we have got fantastic jobs, and we have got good, if expensive, housing. There's a lot of fruit. But when the prophets come, when the scriptures tell us to be generous with our fruit, to share it, to bring some back to God, to not make the community exclusive to only those who can afford multi-million-dollar houses, to feed the hungry, to care for people who are more vulnerable, there's kind of a lip service that's paid to it. And probably in this community, the big barrier is the affordable housing. It's like, oh, we love everybody who lives here as long as they can afford it. And then we have this little line of apartments right along El Camino and a little line right along the freeway where the people who are not quite as rich live. But even those places are expensive. And I just wonder, like, at least for me, one of the things about thinking about working in God's vineyard is we got tons of fruit. The challenge is getting myself, our church, and the neighbors to share it. And this is where I think a faith community can come in so powerfully. I talk to a lot of people who are Christian, but they're not religious. They love Jesus, but they don't want to be part of a church. And granted, churches have done some bad stuff. But something a church often does is a church keeps pointing us back to the prophets and keeps pointing us back to Jesus and keeps pointing us back to the call that they make for us not to be selfish, for us to be generous, both personally, with our families, with the things that we have, but also toward our church and through the church to the world. And I just, I look at a passage like this and there's lots of different kinds of fruit. But at least in this community, I think that's the one that's just overwhelming. So many blessings from God, so much fruit, so many people who've used their intellect and their skills and their leadership and their passions to produce things that benefit or could benefit the world. And it is our responsibility. And I think God calls us over and over and over again in a myriad of different ways to use what we've done. Like, I was even thinking about that as a church. We New Life Community Church, we have this beautiful building in this hugely expensive area. How can we use this this fruit of the labor of people that have gone before us, fruit of tithes and offerings of the people that have gone before us, how can we make sure we maximize the use of it for God's glory and for the people that are left out that God calls us to reach out to? It's just one thought on my mind. I'd love to know what your thoughts are, how you relate into this passage. Feel free to drop a comment or question in the comments. I'll try to answer those, but I'm not going to do it right away. I'll do it, in maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours, or maybe tomorrow or something like that. Or if you'd like to discuss the passage and talk about it with me and anybody else who shows up, then jump on the Zoom at 7 o'clock and I will be there. So God bless and have a great